ladies and gentlemen. In today's video, we are going over the top 30 running back options for Week 13. I'm also going to cover some notable omissions and the reasons why I am keeping them out of my rankings. Later on tonight, I am dropping my quarterback and kicker video as well, so keep an eye out for that. If you guys are new to the channel or you haven't got to it yet, please like and subscribe. Your support means the world to me. It helps me out so much as I battle to get my first 100 subscribers. If you have any start or sit questions, especially as the week goes on, please drop those down below. I'd love to get back to you and help you out in this critical week. We have just a couple. Some people start their fantasy playoffs next week, so we want to make sure we get those dubs while we can. With that all said, done, and out of the way, let's get into Week 13's running back rankings. Jonathan Taylor travels on the road to face Houston. He is the top player of the week for me. It has now been 9 straight weeks where Taylor has finished in the top 10, and he has scored a touchdown in every single one of them. The Texans are bottom 10 in yards per attempt, and Taylor has a massive 82 touches in his last 3 games. He's due for another huge one in this one. Up next, at number 2, it is Joe Mixon, who stays at home to face the Chargers. Now, over the last 4 games, Mixon has an incredible 385 rushing yards, 102 receiving yards, and 8 total touchdowns. He has 4 straight finishes in the top 4, and he gets the Chargers now, who allow the 6th most points per game to the position. You might as well pencil him in for 5 straight. As we move on to number 3, traveling to Cincinnati is Austin pound for pound Eckler. Eckler has back-to-back top 5 finishes for the 2nd time this season, and he should continue to dominate against a Bengals team that has bottom 8 in yards per attempt over their last 3 and points allowed to backs on the season. Leonard Fournette travels to Atlanta, and he is next up at number 4. Playoff Lenny showed up early this year, and he recorded 4 touchdowns, which matched his season total coming in. The Falcons are bottom 10 in rushing yards allowed and points allowed to backs overall, so an encore is imminent. Rounding out my top 5 is Cordarrelle Patterson, who stays at home to face Tampa Bay. Welcome back, Mr. Patterson. In returning from his ankle injury, he absolutely smashed the Jaguars all day, scoring 2 touchdowns with 130 yards of total offense on his way to a top 3 finish. The Bucs allow the fewest rushing yards per game, but Patterson is a receiver too. In at 6, it's Elijah Mitchell. He travels to face the Seahawks. Seattle's defense has turned from the dumpster fire that it was to start the season, but Mitchell has 27 carries in each of his last 2 games and 5 targets or more in 2 out of his last 3. That is elite usage in an excellent matchup, and plenty of points are going to follow. Filling in for an injured Dalvin Cook, it's Alexander Madison. He travels to Detroit, and he is here at 7. Now, every time that Madison has been given an opportunity, he has been a stud. Now that he has the backfield all to himself, I expect big things against a Detroit Lions team that is giving up 133 yards on the ground and a touchdown per game. Najee Harris is in at 8. He stays at home to face Baltimore. Now, game script absolutely crushed any hopes of Najee having a big day, as the Steelers got behind big early to Cincinnati. He finished with his worst outing since week 1. Baltimore allows the 2nd fewest yards per attempt over the last 3 games, and also the 9th fewest points per game to backs on the season. However, he is going to see a ton of work as Pittsburgh's playoff lives hang in the balance. Moving on to 9, at home against Jacksonville, it is Darrell Henderson Jr. Seeing 20 touches and finishing as an RB1, Henderson got back on track against the Pack. He now gets an awesome chance to keep it rolling against the Jags, who are bottom 10 in their last 3 in yards per attempt and rushing yards allowed. My ride or die, Antonio Gibson, sneaks into the top 10. He travels to Vegas to face the Raiders. Gibson rushed a career-high 29 times, and he also saw 7 targets, which is the highest on the team. His massive workload paid off my RB1 ranking of him last week as he produced 146 yards of total offense. He did have J.D. McKissick vulture 2 touchdowns, or his day would have been even bigger. Vegas is bottom 8 in rushing yards and points allowed to backs. At 11, it is Ezekiel Elliott, who travels to New Orleans to take on the Saints. There's been a lot of talk about Zeke potentially resting his knee and the Cowboys giving him some time to fully heal up, but he did practice in full on Monday. That is great news for owners who are hoping to use him this Thursday. It is possible that he does see a few less touches, and this matchup is about as tough as it gets, so that's why he slides out of my top 10. The last RB1 that I have in week 13 is Josh Jacobs. He stays at home to face the football team. This is a plus matchup for Jacobs, who saw 24 touches against Dallas, the most that he has had all season. He turned that into his first top 10 performance. With their playoff hopes reignited and no Darren Waller, Jacobs is going to see a ton of work as the best weapon the Raiders have left. As I move on to 13, Saquon Barkley travels to Miami to face the Dolphins, and he just has not looked close to the same since returning from his injury, and the offensive line is certainly not doing him any favors. Against a Miami team that is allowing the 6th fewest points per game to the position and playing like they are possessed as of late, he is fighting an uphill battle. Going on the road to face the Rams, James Robinson is here at 14. The Rams are allowing the fewest yards per attempt in the entire league over their last 3 games, but they're bottom 10 in rushing touchdowns allowed in that span. So there is hope for Robinson to once again fall into the end zone in a brutal offense. Game script, however, could kill his chances of a big day. Back in my rankings, but not quite into that RB1 territory just yet, is Alvin Kamara, who gets to stay at home to face the Cowboys. Now, I think Kamara is back this week. However, what capacity he is going to play in is the real question. The Saints are absolutely reeling and need a win in the worst way, so it is possible he comes back with that monster workload that we are accustomed to. My fear, however, is that it may be more of a timeshare with Mark Ingram back there and healthy for at least a week. Next up at 16, and traveling to face the Jets, it's Miles Sanders. After the disaster by Jalen Hurts last week, I think it is extremely likely that Philly pounds the rock early and often against a Jets team that is giving up more points to back than anybody. Sanders will see more volume than last week, that is for sure. When he averaged over 7 yards per carry, there is big upside here. Jamal Williams is in at 17. He stays at home to face my Vikings. It seems very unlikely that DeAndre Swift is going to be able to suit up here, so I think Williams gets this smash matchup all to himself against one of the league's worst rushing defenses. He should see a giant workload not only on the ground, but in the air as well. At 18, it is James Conner, who travels to Chicago to face the Bears. With 8 touchdowns in his last 5 games, Conner has been on absolute fire. He has seen 21 carries in 2 out of his last 3 games as well, so you have to love that volume. Chicago is not going to make it easy on him, however, allowing the 5th fewest yards per rush and just 2 rushing touchdowns in their last 3 games. In at number 19 and on an absolute tear is Myles Gaskin, who gets to stay at home against the Giants. For the first time all year, Gaskin performed on an even week and even performed in back-to-back weeks. He has 3 touchdowns in his last 2. He can continue to stay hot against these Giants, who are bottom 5 in points per game to backs on the year and yards per attempt in their last 3. David Montgomery is the last player in my top 20, and he stays at home to face the Cardinals. Instead of capitalizing on the plus matchup, Montgomery fell flat against Detroit, averaging less than 3 yards per carry. Justin Fields would be a welcome sight, no doubt. Arizona is the middle of the road against the run, and Monty is averaging nearly 17 touches per in his last 3. 21 and 22 are back-to-back Broncos, and we start with Javonte Williams. He travels to Kansas City. Williams' usage in the passing game is the reason he gets the nod over his teammate, and he finally scored last week after a 3-week hiatus. Kansas City has stiffened up on the ground as of late. They haven't allowed a rushing score in their last 3, so that caps both upsides for the Broncos backs in this one. We move on to 22, and it is Melvin Gordon III. The Chiefs are allowing the 5th most yards per attempt, and Gordon continues to lead the volume in this timeshare by a hair. The Broncos are going to do whatever they can so that they can keep pounding the rock and keep the ball away from Mahomes. On to number 23. Same game, it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And after an RB1 finish in his first game back, CEH looks ready to take back that lead role. Denver is top 12 in rushing yards allowed per game and in points allowed to backs, so he is going to have his work cut out for him. In at number 24, it's Devonta Freeman. He faces the Steelers on the road. And Freeman doubled up Latavius Murray in carries last week. He saw 16, but he was able to muster just over 3 yards per carry with them. So the hold is tenuous at best. With the Steelers allowing 5.7 yards per carry in their last 3 games, there is some upside if the touches remain. My 25th ranked player is Boston Scott, who travels to New York to take on the Jets. Now, in 2 out of his last 3 games, Scott has been able to finish as an RB2 or better. This ranking is obviously assuming that Jordan Howard has to miss at least 1 more week with that knee sprain. Up next, at 26, it is Damien Harris, who goes on the road to face the Bills. And I tried to warn you guys a couple weeks ago, but unfortunately it looks like it is back to a full-on committee in New England. Harris has just 21 carries. Over his last 2 games, he's seen a single target in each of them. Buffalo's rushing defense has certainly cooled off over the last couple weeks, but not enough to make me love Harris here. We are going to have to keep a close eye on this next situation, but at 27, I have Tony Pollard going on the road to face New Orleans. Pollard could see increased usage with Zeke battling his knee issue, and he racked up 68 yards of offense on Thanksgiving, adding a kick return touchdown, so Dallas would be wise to utilize him. As we move to 28, it's Tevin Coleman who stays at home to face the Eagles. And it was Coleman who stepped back into that lead back role for New York. He saw 16 carries. He did get a touchdown vultured, but the 18 touches he did receive are promising. Into number 29, we find Matt Breida. New to my rankings, he gets the New England Patriots. And seemingly out of nowhere, Breida now has 3 touchdowns in his last 3 games and seems like the back to play in Buffalo. While that may not be saying much, it certainly gets him into flex consideration. Just barely hanging on to my rankings, in at 30, it's Alex Collins who stays at home against the 49ers. It was an absolutely brutal night for all Seahawks players involved against Washington, but particularly bad for Collins. He should see a decent amount of usage moving forward, but Seattle's offense needs to do a lot better and turn it around before he's anything more than a hopeful volume play. Into my notable omissions, and it starts with Ty Johnson staying at home to face Philly. Johnson was expected to play a much larger role after Michael Carter went down. Unfortunately, that never materialized. With 8 touches in his last 2 games combined, he is a great sit for me. Splitting time with Damien Harris, another notable omission I have is Ramondre Stevenson. 9 touches in a blowout is concerning, and with just 2 targets in his last 2 games, he isn't getting enough volume to warrant a start. The final omission I have is Darrell Williams, who faces Denver at home. With a lot of unknown about what the usage is going to be like for Williams here, I am keeping him out of my rankings. For now, check back in on Friday. And that will do it for Week 13's running backs. Thank you guys so much for joining me for this video. If you are enjoying the content, if you're new to the channel, and if you haven't done it yet, please like and subscribe. The support means the world to me as I keep fighting for every subscriber I can get. If you have any start or sit questions, please drop them down below. I would love to get back to you and help you out. This is Relentless Press. I'm your host, Abriam Opath, and we'll see you next time.